I think that there is a hugely increased awareness of the importance of self-regulated learning and autonomy, etc., among teachers. Right? When I started my career 25 years ago, autonomy was still a very new thing, and that's not the case anymore. There's a high level of interest, etc. And I think that generally speaking, it's much more embedded. Teachers try much more actively to develop it. However, we still have a large number of issues around this. One is that still in many teacher preparation programs, as well as teacher support, so both pre-service and in-service, it's given scant attention. It's talked about as a concept, but from what I gather, usually as a theoretical construct, not so much in the sense of, well, how do I actually do this? Where do I start, etc. So that's one big issue. The second is that it's still very, and that probably ties in with the organizational bit, it's still very uneven. When I go to universities or schools and I do observations, etc., I see some teachers are doing a fantastic job and some teachers who don't give it any attention whatsoever. So as a learner, from a learner's experience, it's very, unpredictable, and there's no continuity. And as we just already established, this requires a long-term, slow and steady approach. So if that's interrupted, it's not going to be as successful as it could be, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I'd say the same. It's very piecemeal. And a lot of teachers have got the willingness, but a lack of time, and they've got a lot of other pressures from curriculum exams and parental expectations and so on, which means that something that isn't specifically there that you have to do will probably get missed out, and they don't know where to start.
Of course.
And if it's not followed through in other subjects, then it doesn't have much effect, and students can't understand why they're doing it in one lesson and not in the other. It's, it needs a sort of structure across the whole school to embed it properly.
Yeah, it's like going to the gym today and then not for 3 weeks and then 3 days in a row.
You know what I do. Yeah. That doesn't work.
No, gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it's really the organizational level where I would like to see the most change.
Okay.
Because I work with pre-service teachers and in-service teachers on different programs, and usually when this topic comes up, I guess because it's a vested interest of mine, strategies and self-regulation, one of the common responses is that well that wouldn't work in my school, or we can't do that within our curriculum, or there's too much to teach. And it's easy to brush that off, but at the same time, having taught in similar contexts, I think I'm very much reminded of that. This is what we need to cover, this is what the test is on, and if it's a private institution, this is what we're paying for in terms of parents and students and that kind of thing. So I think at the organizational level is where these kinds of ideas need to be more carefully implemented, I think, in a systematic way, like we've outlined in the paper. Sort of going from that engaging sort of initial stage all the way through empowering and the other steps in between. Because if there is no benefit to introducing these concepts into a course where you only see the learners for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or one term or something like that, then it can be very challenging. And I think for teachers as well, we maybe start taking this idea of that we're not necessarily here to promote lifelong and life-wide learning, but I need to get these learners to a certain score by this date, or my job is on the line, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a tricky situation, and I think now that we have a position paper with someone like Oxford University Press, and it's not just an individual researcher throwing out ideas in a journal article, for example, I think that there could be a lot more interaction now with this kind of support behind it in terms of not just what the teachers are doing, or because it's easy to say, oh, well, the teachers aren't doing a lot, or the teachers aren't doing enough. But what is the organization doing? How's the organization addressing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think in the paper, in the framework, the top half of it, and that was deliberate, even though you could argue that pedagogy and therefore the bottom half of the figure is the most important, but it is shaped by what happens at other levels, right? And I have the same experience as all of you, I'm sure, is that teachers say, well, I like this autonomy stuff or this strategy stuff, but I haven't got time for it. So yeah, that is not down to the individual teacher. So the top half of the framework is essentially the wider context, basically the environment outside of the classroom, beyond the teacher and the learner. And there are three layers. There's the societal, there's the institutional, and there's the direct managerial. And we'll probably talk a little bit later about how all of those need to come together and how they relate directly to the pedagogy. But at this point, what is important to recognize is that if, for example, at a what we call in the paper societal level, which could be, for example, a Ministry of Education setting guidelines, right, or having policies implemented, if they do not encourage or possibly even allow for learners to make meaningful decisions about their own learning, then clearly that's going to have an impact on what actually happens within an institution, how leaders and managers are going to instruct their teachers and how teachers are going to be teaching, right? So it really is important to look at the broader picture to understand the landscape.
Thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about this topic, you can listen to the full podcast on Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Just follow the link in the description. See you soon.